Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Jay Murphy. Jay is a premier body-positive health and wellness educator and is using her training as a certified health coach and her degree in health administration to help women embrace body positivity and develop a love affair with themselves while achieving their health and wellness goals. You see, Jay found herself at over 700 pounds. And she knew that in a specific moment, which she shares in this episode, there was a specific moment in her life where she said, this needs to change. And she went out and she took action and she began to work out, and now she's lost over 200 pounds. And the thing is, having some friends who are also, obese, it's very hard for them to find trainers and people to follow that have the same body model. A lot of these things are really programmed for people who are already semi-fit or a little overweight, and it's hard for them to get into it. And so she's leading the charge of getting people healthy, but remaining positive in the whole entire process. I think you guys are going to love this episode. I absolutely love my conversation with Jay, and honestly, during it, I became a huge fan. She's not only changing her life, but she's changing the lives of so many. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. No matter where you are in your health journey, this conversation is important to have. Now, before we get to that episode, I don't know if you know, but live events are back, baby. Growth Now Summit Live is happening May 13th through 15th of 2022, and tickets are on sale now. We've got the early bird prices for you, so go grab your ticket now, reserve your spot. It's already halfway sold out. So I want you guys there. We're going to have an incredible speaker lineup. You're going to be blown away by who is going to join us at this event. Obviously, there's the VIP welcome party, the after party that's open to every single person. We have incredible entertainment and, of course, great lessons to be learned for your life and amazing people to connect with. So head over to growthnowsummit.com. Get your tickets now because they are officially on sale and they will sell out long before the event. Cannot wait to see you guys there. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Jay Murphy. Jay, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been a long time coming. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Roberto, who people who listen to the show know him. He's been on the show. He's a coach and a mentor of mine, and happy to call him a friend as well. And he connected us, but I knew your story from before. You were on a dear friend and client of mine, Natalie Jill's podcast, and just really blown away and inspired by what you're doing to not only change your life, but to inspire so many others as well. But why don't we start with who is Jay today, and then we'll break down how you got there. So introduce yourself to my audience.
All right, thanks. So I am Jay from Becoming Jay, and I'm a body positive health and wellness coach. So what that means is I help women that are 150 pounds or more overweight learn how to make exercise and fitness fit their bodies so that they can reach their goals, whatever they might be, without shame and without the guilt of diet culture. And I'm also the host of Confidently Courageous with Jay, my podcast, where we bring women and people, period, to the forefront that are doing amazing, incredible things, that are beating odds, are doing things that people have told them they couldn't do, or that they did not think that they could do. And they are trailblazing and really impacting other people's lives, and, have come out on the other side thriving and just doing amazing things.
No, I love it. And obviously, like you said, being able to be at the forefront of that is absolutely amazing, because look, so many people struggle with their weight, with how do I even get started, right? Like what we see, and I'm somebody who I've struggled with my weight through my life, up and down, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, down 40 pounds, I'm happy to announce that I'm on the lower end right now, because I really tackled it in the beginning of the year. But, it's a struggle for so many, because we see what the world puts out there, which is these athletes, right? These lifelong athletes. And I'm like, well, I can't do that push-up where my whole entire body flies off the ground. So how do I get started? And you're really leading the forefront. But, part of your personal journey is you found yourself at 700 pounds one day.
Mhm.
And that's what really began your journey. So let's talk. I want to go back even before that. Let's get into your story a little bit about how you kind of found yourself in that situation in your life. And you're like, I need to take control of this. And then we'll get into how you became the inspiring person you are today. But talk a little bit about your childhood and where it all began.
Yeah, oh, that's a good question. So I come from a small town in the Midwest, and food was used as a celebratory thing. However, my mom was very, very diligent about creating habits for me, or at least that's what it looked like, habits that were going to be healthy, long-term habits. So I wasn't allowed to drink soda, not a lot of juice. She was always water, water, water. Once a month, we would go out to eat, but there wasn't an exorbitant amount of fast food and candy and all of the things that you would potentially think that someone that had a weight problem, like that's what society tells us are the habits of people that are in larger bodies.
Right.
Well, the caveat to that is that my mom had dealt with a lot of trauma herself. And we had just recently had a conversation about this very thing because my weight started to um, become noticeable, the weight gain, when I was about 8 years old, 8, 9 years old. Before then, I was an average weight child. Well, what we found was we were in this very unhealthy dynamic of her trying to protect me from the same traumas that she experienced. And some of those traumas were, in her mind, brought on by the fact that she developed really early and got attention that she didn't want and whatnot. And so while there were healthy habits, like her conscious mind was like, I want my child to be healthy, her subconscious mind was creating this relationship with food and this narrative with me, with my body and my eating that really led me to begin overeating. It started with a diet program at 10 years old and putting me in Overeaters Anonymous at 11, when really I didn't know what those things were.
Wow.
But it was just this dynamic. She would buy food and hide it in binge, and then I would want the things and then couldn't find the things. And it just was a really unhealthy relationship. From there, it was, where I grew up, it wasn't an odd thing to see people in larger bodies. We're a little, we like our food in the Midwest, and we're a little heavier people typically. Um, but I maintained this quote unquote normal lifestyle. I was very active. I did all the things. I danced and did drill team and all of that. Um, Even though I had the weight on my body, it wasn't until I was 25 and I had my first son. I was put on bed rest and gained over 100 pounds with that pregnancy. I had some metabolic changes. That's when I developed lipedema, but some of these things went undiagnosed, and that really created a really major weight change for me. And then at that point, I was in a unhappy marriage, and we were really impacted by the downturn in the economy, and so pile on depression and lack of activity and taking care of two kids, and a husband that was out of work, and just putting myself on the back burner. I wasn't paying attention to even the medical things that were causing the weight gain, right? And when I looked up one day, I was 700 pounds. I had fallen outside. I couldn't get up. Strangers came across the street to try and help me up, and I didn't trust them to help me. And in that moment, I said, I can't do this anymore. I had just lost two people very close to me. My cousin and my best friend died over the holidays unexpectedly. They left children behind. And I said, I have these two children that are looking for me, that want me, that I want to be there to see their children and their children's children. And I'm not living life in accordance to that. So I decided I had to make some changes, some really tough changes.
Yeah. Going back to when you were 8 and 11 years old, being put into these programs that, like you said, you didn't even understand it. Right. Now,
Right.
my girlfriend's actually, she's a nutritionist. And so we're very, very smart in understanding, not saying the words like diet for weight loss and all these things in front of her two kids who are 10 and 8, because she understands the impact of that. But so many people didn't. Your mom didn't know that she was potentially hurting you long term. But what was that like at that age, going to these things and being like, I don't understand why I'm here? Like, what was that doing to you mentally?
It was confusing and it did create some resentment, around the 12, 13-year age. You already have issues with your
Yeah,
parents. There's this
plenty. Yeah.
hormonal battle, and coming into your own and figuring out who you were. And so, it didn't make sense to me that I was seeing her exhibit behaviors, but then I was being told I was something that I didn't feel like I was.
Mm.
It made me feel bad about myself and about my body, and like there was something wrong with me, like I wasn't doing something right. So it was very challenging, but then at the same time I didn't want to let my mother down. I didn't want to um, cause a problem, right? And so I went along with it. But it was a challenge, and it was difficult sitting in rooms hearing people say things to me that were supposed to be my truth that I didn't feel like were my truth.
Hmm. Wow, that's so powerful to have that realization at such a young age, like you said, at 12, 13 years old, to have to be put into that situation, but then also be kind of aware of it. Like, hold up. Like, I'm not really relating to this whole entire thing. But that leads to the subconscious of the limiting beliefs of, I guess that's who I am. And then it starts to really
Yeah,
sit in the back of your mind. And all of a sudden we're owning it subconsciously. Right. And as you
absolutely.
went through your life and then, having your first child and gaining the 100 pounds, what was going through your mind at that point of being like, okay, well, here I am now. You were just trudging forward. Like you said, you put yourself on the back burner, right?
Mhm.
So what was the big shift moment? I know you said you were laying on the ground and you were unsure if you could trust these strangers. But what was the moment of like, okay, enough is enough every single day of my life? Because I think sometimes as we battle through our limiting beliefs, enough is enough for a short period of time, and then we fall back into it. And then it's enough, and then we fall back into it. So why was that like that shifting moment for you?
Honestly, it was because there was a line outside of the bank that I was going into. And in the front of the line, there was a woman who I'm going to guess was in her very late 70s, early 80s. And there was a young man standing across from her. And when I fell, I looked at the young man and he looked at me like mortified. He wanted to help, but knew he couldn't. He was very thin, not big. And so I know he was like, what do I do? And when I finally got up, um, after the threat of, and I say threat because it wasn't threatening, but the two gentlemen that tried to help me said, well, if we can't help you, we'll call the ambulance for you. And that was number one. I'm like, listen, I live in an urban city. I know what goes on. I'm on a major street. I'm going to end up on World Star Hip Hop, right? Somebody's going to drive by with their cell phone and video me. That's not my life. That can't be my life. Like I'm too young for this. But then it was the moment when I got up and collected myself and tried to collect my dignity and still go into the bank because I still had stuff to do. And the woman in the front of the line, the 70, 80-year-old woman, looked at me and said, it's okay, go in front of me. And the look of apathy that she had, and knowing that that should never, the way I was raised, that should never be the case. I should let her go before me. She should have my seat. I should open the doors for her. And so her looking at me and saying in her age and in her life experience, she was still stronger and more able than I was, it broke me down because that's never how it should be. Never. Not the way I was raised, not what I had in my mind as to what my life should look like. And in that
Wow.
moment I said, I this cannot happen. This cannot be my life.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine being in that scenario at any age, whether and I don't know how old you were at the time. So whether you were 20, 30, 40, I know you weren't that old, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
I couldn't imagine being in those moments. But I get it. Like that calls for a shift in our life, right? I always say that our rock bottom moment, so to say, is when we choose when it is, right? And we make the change then. So what has the journey been like for you personally? Because obviously, and we're going to get into what you're doing now and the cause that you're leading, but what was the journey like for you from that day forward? How did you start looking into this? Did you say, how did I find myself here? Right. Cause that's not just over, like, to get to 700 pounds, that's not just overeating. There's other things involved. What was that journey like? Who'd you talk to? Like, where did you go? What was that like?
The funny thing is my kids, I kept them very, very active, and they went to a karate dojo where they both took mixed martial arts, and my daughter danced. and the owners of the dojo were also personal trainers.
Oh,
And though it was a husband and wife and then their children, and the wife was already subtly hinting to me, I used to work out with her son, he is a trainer, and she would say, Jay, he's going to start classes again because we're planning this cruise. He's thinking about training again. And I'm like, oh, that's nice, good. At that moment I wasn't trying to hear. I'm like, I don't have time, this is not on my radar, like whatever. And so that day I said, okay, I know she has been telling me, I know she's been nudging, I know she's been hinting. This is the time to go in and just say, I need help, which was probably the most difficult thing to do, to stop and say, okay, I am out of control. I can't handle what's going on right now, and I need help. But I did, because I knew if I didn't, that it was going to go downhill very quickly. So I went in and I told her I needed help. I told her what happened, and I said, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And so she said, okay. She said, let's put you on the schedule. She put me on the schedule for 3 days a week for 30 minutes. She said, we're not going to, be super ambitious and burn you out, but let's just get you in. And I said, okay, we'll do that. So I was on the schedule for the very next day. It was like, we were not even going to wait. We're not going to give it a chance for me to change my mind and back out, whatever the case may be. So the very next day, I took my kids to school like I normally do. I dropped them off, and the dojo was 2 minutes from the school. I dropped them off at 7:30. My training appointment was at 9:30. I drove directly to the dojo. I parked my car. I got a blanket out of my back seat. I put my hood from my hoodie over my head. I wrapped up in the blanket and I went to sleep in my car in the dojo parking lot.
wow.
And I waited for my trainer to come, and he knocked on the window, my car window, when he arrived. And I got out of the car and I went in. And I'm asked often, why did I do that? And the reason is because I knew that if I dropped them off and then went back home and went upstairs, that was it. I wasn't going to leave until it was time to pick them up. And I would find every single reason not to show up for myself. So instead, I said, what do I need to do to create absolutely no excuse for me to not be there? And I knew the one way I would show up for myself is if he saw me, because I couldn't back out at that point.
Yeah.
Like my ego, my pride wouldn't let me walk away. So I said, okay, you have to do what you have to do. So I went and I sat and I waited.
So why'd you go back the next day?
Because I had gone back day one. I had gone back day one, and I made it through day one. And I knew if I could, and I will say he was incredibly patient and incredibly understanding. And so that first day, it wasn't, we're going to go balls to the wall and do all these crazy things. No, it was, he put those fold out gymnastic mats out for me to sit on. And he said, okay, we're going to stand up and we're going to punch for 30 seconds and then you're going to sit down. And that's what I did. And then I stood up and I kicked back and forth for 30 seconds and sat down. And I sat down for like 2-3 minutes. And then I got in. So it was this back and forth, very patient, very slow. Just let's start to warm up the body, move the body. And most people would say, well, that was pointless. That was a waste of time. Like, why are you doing that? You didn't do anything. But what I did was, and what he gave me, the gift he gave me was allowing me to see that I could move at my own pace. And just showing up was like the biggest flex of them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I could do it the next day.
Yeah. And, you know, it's great that you're leading this charge now for individuals that are 150 plus pounds overweight, because it's hard to find. And here's, I'll tell you why I know this. So I have a good friend named Sean Mulroney, who he actually leads the obesity revolution. And that's his whole thing. He's like, my biggest problem was I didn't find anybody who was willing to help me. Because you have to customize things, right? You have to say, let's take it easy. Now, most trainers, like, they'll be like, do 47 burpees. Hey buddy, I'm not doing 47 burpees. And so, you know, that's kind of the approach that you see across the board. And to be able to find somebody in your situation that was able to do that was super powerful. Yeah. So what made you start to share this journey on social media? I mean, you have like I forget the number, 120,000 plus followers on Instagram now. What made you start sharing this journey and so publicly?
At first it wasn't a choice. A video got posted of me. Instagram was my digital vision board, so I used it just to surround myself with other accounts that were
Hmm.
doing the things that I wanted to accomplish. I had no expectation of sharing everything publicly or being that person. But a video was shared, and then a young lady reached out to me. She inboxed me and she said, "I saw a video of you flipping a tire. I'm the same height as you. It looks like we weigh the same. I have a 1-year-old son. I don't want to die. Thank you for showing me what we can do, because nobody is showing what we can do." And I had to sit with that for a minute, because I was that young lady. Like, I knew that feeling, and all of the accounts I was surrounding myself with were before and after pictures.
Mm.
Nobody was showing the in between, and no one was showing what it looked like to work out in this size body. And there's this very strange dynamic that we have with body positivity and health and fitness and weight loss, where we look at people and we demonize people that are in larger bodies and say, you shouldn't get that big, you should do something about it, you should move. And the moment they move, they're made fun of.
Mm.
What were you doing? How are you doing that? Oh, you're good. I mean, the hatred that can be spewed is just such a, it's a horrible power struggle, and it really does impact people. And I thought to myself, if I felt that way and she feels this way, how many other thousands of women feel the exact same way and need to see that not only are they not alone, but they are fully capable.
Wow.
And in that moment, I decided I had no choice but to share, because I was given the support, I was given the opportunity, I was given everything that I needed to show up for myself and succeed. So I had to.
What a powerful moment, and kudos to you for stepping into that challenge, right? Like that was the universe saying, "Here's your sign,"
Yeah.
um, and you stepped into it big time, right? And so, what? How long ago was that, and how long has this journey been now for you of sharing what you're going through, and what's the progress that you've made? Like, fill us into that gap.
Yeah. So that was 2016. And in that first 8.5 months, I lost 87 pounds naturally.
Wow.
Yeah, and we just started filming the modifications and showing, okay, he wants me to do a burpee, but I can't get on the floor. This is the alternative that we have. And now this is the progression from that alternative. And within that first 2 years, I was able to lose 200 pounds, and completely naturally, no diet pills.
Congratulations.
Thank you. No surgery, no nothing. Um, and I think the biggest success from all of that was the shift in my thinking, because when I showed up, it was about losing the weight so that I wasn't on the ground. And within that first 3 months, it shifted into, I don't even want to look at the scale. I'm measuring my success based on how fulfilled of a life I can have and how strong I can be. And every day was showing up to beat myself from the version I was the day before. It had nothing to do with the scale anymore. And it had to do with, what can I do? How am I restricted now? And how can I undo those restrictions?
Yeah.
What does my ultimate life look like? So, and it's been an up and down journey. I've had setbacks, I've had injuries. I'm currently nursing a knee injury now. It's not easy, um, I've life happens, right? You get sick, stuff happens with the family, all the things. But I think once you make that shift in your mind about your why, right, it becomes so much bigger than that piece that we're always told is so important. And it makes it easier to press that restart button when you do have to pause, because sometimes
Mm.
you have to pause. And I tell people it's kind of like the four tires on a car. If you get a flat, they don't just replace that tire in the same spot, they rotate your tires, they balance them, right?
Yeah.
So that then the tires that were in the back can now bear the weight of the front, right?
Mm.
And so that they wear more evenly. So it's the same thing with the journey. Sometimes it's very workout focused, sometimes it's very nutrition focused, sometimes it's pause all of that. I need to work on some internal stuff so that I
Yeah.
can get better and stronger so I can show up there more effectively.
No, I love everything that you're saying. I also love the tire analogy, by the way. But I love everything you're saying, especially when you talk about it. It begins with the mind, right? Your mindset. And I have a T-shirt that I sell in my store called "Mindset Over Everything," because it really is like that's the first shift in your life. Like I had to shift my mindset in order to build the life that I have now because of where I came from. Because society and everybody else said you can't make it. And so I had to make all those shifts, right? And that's in everything that I do. So like my question, and look, and I share this because we still have that next limiting belief. We still have that mindset, that isn't quite where it needs to be. So my question for you is, what do you do to tune up that part, right? You just use the tire analogy. What do you do to tune up the engine to get the mind right when you hit that brick wall again, when things get tough, when you hurt your knee? What are your check-in points? What are the things that you do to make sure that's right?
Well, I have this thing that I do called the perfect average day. And so I sat down with myself and I asked myself, what would the perfect day look like if I had to live it day in and day out on repeat, kind of like Groundhog's Day? You seen the movie?
Yeah.
So what would that day look like? How would I wake up? And down to the details of like the sheets on my bed, the weight of my blanket, do I have the alarm going off in my ear or not? Are my kids running it? Like all of those things. And then I had to stop and say, what do I have in place now that is helping that, or that is in alignment with that? And what is not there, and how can I make that happen? And that is my check-in point. Every once in a while I stop and I say, okay, I'm noticing this feels off or that feels off, or this is happening or that is happening. Is this in alignment with what I said I wanted? Is this in alignment with my perfect average day? Am I feeling the way I want to feel? Am I experiencing all the things that I want to experience? And if the answer is no, then it's what needs to be adjusted? What do I need to look at? What am I doing or not doing, honoring myself to make sure that those things are happening? And when I can pinpoint that, then it's much more easy to say, okay, what are the steps that I need to take to get back to that place? And it can be as simple as I'm waking up to the alarm clock for a commitment that I've made that doesn't really serve my highest good, but I'm doing it. So, how can I readjust that? Or it could be my body's out of whack, right? I didn't listen. And this is a true lesson that I had to learn. I wasn't listening to my body and I wasn't trusting myself. And I let someone push me, like mentally push me to do something that my body was telling me I shouldn't be doing. And I injured myself.
Mm.
So I always tell people, trust what you feel, trust your body, listen to yourself, right? And do the things that feel like they are serving you at your highest self. Because at the end of the day, it's you that has to sit with yourself after.
So powerful. So powerful. One thing I say all the time is, one of the most selfless things we can do is be selfish, right?
Absolutely.
And, and,
I
and that's everything that I heard in what you said, right? Like to
yeah,
understand what we need for ourselves so we can then serve, right? Like you have so many people to serve. You have children, you have a community that people can sign up for. There's 120,000 followers on Instagram. There's the people who don't follow you but are watching you. Like that's
yeah.
happening too, right? And so but in order to do that at the highest level, like you had mentioned, you have to be selfish. And I just love how you set yourself up for that success. And so one cool thing about my show is that I get to interview some of the most successful people in the world, however you want to define success. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what my definition of success right now is being able to live that perfect average day,
Mm.
because that is the space where I feel I'm being served at the highest level, and so I can serve at the highest level. That is my threshold for true happiness, right? And when you're at that point, everything else flows with ease. You're in alignment, right? And so I think that for me, that is my level of success. It's not necessarily monetary, although some of that is in there.
No, that's
Some
important.
of that
Look,
is in there,
we
right?
got to make sure we have the things we need, right?
Right. But yeah, so that's it. And again, some of the things that I do to ensure that is I remind myself of those things all the time. I do what we would call a vision board, but for me, it's not really a vision board. It's reminders of the ways I need to show up for myself and show up for others so that I can stay in alignment with those goals. It's saying no when I need to say no and saying yes when I need to say yes. Right.
Mm.
And so it's really just keeping that and remembering that that's the ultimate goal. And those things sometimes include and entwine with other people. So I want my kids to be happy. I want them to be able to do the things that they love without guilt, without feeling like they have to please anybody else. And being able to serve in the way I'm serving and to be able to see women transform, not necessarily physically, but internally. Their dialogue with themselves and the way they're showing up, like that's everything to me.
Mm, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your podcast, right? So you said you just recently launched a show. Let's talk a little bit about that. So tell us more about the podcast. Tell us how people can find it, because obviously people listening to this, they love podcasts. So why not add another one to the list? Just as long as they don't replace mine with yours. They need to keep listening to
Absolutely
mine.
not.
But tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it's Confidently Courageous with Jay. And it was born out of my live weekly show that I used to do called Dear Skinny Friend Live, where we would have conversations with other people in larger bodies and then professionals around certain topics that impacted people in larger bodies. So we talked about sex in larger bodies and also had a sex therapist on. We talked about fashion and we've talked about workplace discrimination, all the things. What I found was that there were so many amazing people out there doing things that still hadn't been seen by everybody. And I'm hearing people say, I wish somebody was doing, or I wish I knew somebody who, or I wish somebody would talk about. And I said, well, we know all these people.
Hmm.
We know all these people. So how can we come together and, what do they say? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with others. I know I
Yeah.
butchered that, but that's the
No,
basis of it.
very, very, very close. Yeah.
And so it was like, how can we all collectively bring our voices together? And so I've reached out to people that I felt were doing amazing things. I wrapped it around the pillars of the brand, which are mindset, fitness, and lifestyle. And so there are 8-week segments where we interview people in those pillars. What we find is that typically their stories overreach into all three, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just bringing these amazing souls to everybody's attention. You can find us at confidentlycourageouspodcast.com. We're on all the podcasting platforms. And yeah, I'm super excited. It's been amazing. We will be wrapping up our season at the end of the year, and some powerful, amazing people that have touched me. And there are a couple that made me cry. And I'm like, that's not your job. That's my
You're
job.
like that. That doesn't work that way.
Right.
No, I love it. And so guys, make sure you go check out that podcast. How else can people follow you? What's your thing on Instagram? Tell them all that stuff too.
Yeah, so across social platforms, you can find me at Becoming Jay. That's JAI. So that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the places. And then you can also find me at getfitwithjay.com, which is where we house our membership for women that are 150 pounds or more overweight. And then we also have the Build Your Plus Strong community over on Facebook. And so that's our Facebook group where we walk through the journey together and support each other and give tips and tricks and all the things.
I love it. I love it. So Jay, I wrap up every single episode with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Hi, my biggest moment of growth. It would have to be the moment that I realized that my existence was not a mistake and was not an inconvenience, and that I was here for a greater purpose, and that I had the right to live out loud without apology.
I love that so much. So Jay, thank you so much for stepping into that calling, for doing what you're doing, not only again for yourself, but such a large community of individuals that are that need your support, that need your guidance, that need your leadership. You're truly making a massive difference in the world. So thank you so much for being you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with my audience. This has been phenomenal. You have a new fan in me as well. So thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, thank you for having me and sharing your audience, your people, your community with me. I really appreciate it. And you got me for life too.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.